Okay, I'm really excited to talk about this. We're going to be talking about Des's past as well as Chris's past. It all wraps up extremely neatly. But before we talk about that, we have to lay some ground rules and how specifically a dark world works. There's a lot of gray area, and we actually get a lot of confirmation in the game that gets overlooked. So the first question that a lot of people have is how is Rousey and only Rousey allowed to move between dark worlds without turning into stone? Now, originally, I just thought maybe Rousey's just legit. He truly is the Prince of the Dark World. That isn't Rousey's answer, though. If you actually ask the question of why Lancer turns into stone in chapter 2, Rousey's response is you see, each dark fountain creates a different dark world, a world whose darkness reflect the will of its fountain. Castle Town's grand fountain is made of pure darkness. As long as it stays flowing, any darkener can live there. Weird. So it's not Rousey's doing, it's the fountain. It's the fact that Rousey came from that fountain is what makes Rousey so special. But what about Lancer? I thought he was also from that fountain. Actually, I had my jaw drop when I had to find out that where Lancer comes from and all of the Field of Hopes and Dreams are actually a completely different fountain next to the Castle Town. We go in and see Rousey inside of Castle Town, and Rousey locks the door behind us as we enter what is east of that room, Gerson's classroom. This is a completely separate fountain. Weird. The fact that there's this signature in Castletown implies that there was a certain someone that opened this fountain different than every other fountain. The reason I say this, the Roaring Night has opened fountains as seen in chapter 2, and every single person living there couldn't leave that fountain without turning into stone or enter. Chris has opened fountains in chapter 3, and no one can leave or enter without turning into stone. Granted, they take a longer time, but that is because Chris probably has more determination than the Roaring Knight does. Susie's another case. Who opened the fountain at school? Before I answer that, I also want you to acknowledge that actually Castletown is the oldest fountain. Recently, in chapter 2, they say that recently another fountain has appeared on the horizon. This gets acknowledged again in chapter 3, the fact that we're able to then, one, go to fountains and then see that fountains are being opened in the general distance. If we're looking over the horizon, this actually is the bunker. The bunker has been opened recently, and it checks out. This is a very skinny fountain. It was likely opened with very little determination. This is probably the Roaring Knight that opened this fountain. But, anyways, let's answer who was involved with this school fountain. I'm now going to answer that question with another question, and it is what if December Holiday never visited the bunker in the first place? What if the fountain she sings about is actually Castletown that is taking place in school? I believe the reason why this fountain has yet to be replicated is the exact same reason why we're playing Chris in the first place. I believe Chris killed December Holiday. December being the person that has created the Grand Pier Fountain that is Castletown. Let me elaborate. There's already so much parallels between the two of Chris and December Holiday. The fact that December Holiday, she has human boots, she was going under a change in her life, one that her parents likely never ever supported, giving her classical instruments instead of the life that she wanted to now grow into. The fact that in Roots, Des parallels us, and the second we control her is when we get killed by Chris. But first, again, we're talking about Chris. Let's talk about this theme of guilt that he has revolving around him throughout the entire game. When we go inside to see the Eggman in chapter 3, he reads, right, this is where we draw pictures and don't kill each other. Between your fingers, a faint gray crease glittered stubbornly. You ran some water over your hands and dried them, but you could never wash it all away. Of course, this is all in his head, but what is this? This comes again in chapter 3 when we meet Eram. He reads there. That's what I wanted to see. Flickering red like pretty little flames. Your eyes can't hide it, Chris. Without play, your knife grows dull. This is implying that Chris's knife was once sharp. We just need to find out who he used it on. So, this fountain, the first fountain in town that was opened in this school, which should be Castletown, we get a lot of help from dust bunnies that read, a sweet and fresh girl, a soft and clean boy, and a refreshing boy. Two boys and one girl. This is most likely to be Des, Azrael, and Chris. We get more dialogue on who and what might have been down here. In chapter 3, the same entity shows up because, of course, they're dust, except when you kill them, they get lost even if you recruited the chapter 1 bad guys. They're actually the exact same entity. These read, a poorly trimmed boy, a messy and rowdy and dirty girl, and a crying, crying, crying boy. Again, it also reads a lost, 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 and lost girl. This lost girl is obviously talking about Des. This crying and crying, crying boy most likely is talking about Chris, except I'm starting to realize this second time around, there isn't something pointing at Azrael. A poorly trimmed boy, that's Chris. A messy and unfocused girl, that's Des. A crying, crying boy, that's Chris again. A lost, lost, lost girl, that is Des again. This is most likely the return to that same fountain after Azrael left for college. Again, this is just more and more proof that Azrael and Des has been to that same fountain when we see that Susie says, hey, in that corner, that's the cat from Castletown. She has no idea, but Azrael knows exactly who this cat is from Castletown. Des is someone that seemed to have violent comic books, paintballs, a cracked hockey mask, but has frayed yarn and buttons. December Holiday doesn't seem like the type of person to just knit. More proof of Chris being at that exact fountain is the king talking about, you dare return to torment us once again. He goes on and on talking about how you left us and the night returned, or the night actually came and gave us fresh purpose. This is saying that the night is actually new to this fountain. He is not. This is funny, but I just wanted to talk about it. When you play the game for the first time, Chris already has a saved file there, and he's level 1. This is different from where you actually don't have a save, and an Undertale does the same. So you can actually see who is on their first playthrough and who is not. Someone that deleted their first save will have empty level 0. Someone that is actually starting the game vanilla will have Chris have a save file. This is not an oversight. The game can function properly without it. Chris has been in this fountain before. Doing what? Rousey then talks about how Rousey has been waiting here probably his whole life. Unluckily, you don't know how long his life is, so you don't have an actual amount of time, but just the idea that this fountain has existed here quietly for no reason for a while. These egg rooms are also showing glimpses of blocked trauma that Chris visits recently. The idea is that this tree is actually representing this common trope of the tree of life. It represents spiritual awakening and strength. This was talked about with monks, but it's seen a lot in media, like in Attack on Titan, like in Omori, and like in Deltarune. What is this tree? And what is it trying to make us remember? Don't you remember what happened? I'm going to blow your mind a little bit, but I think that this is how the story goes. There aren't seven, well, you named us. If you were good at counting cards, you wouldn't have needed to cheat. This kills a lot of birds with one stone, and it is the conversation of if you were good at counting cards, then you would have never needed to cheat. Killing what is a monster boss, which is a main character, pushes you automatically to the next level. Judging by how the sprites operate inside of Roots, you can see that December Holiday is a monster boss. December Holiday would have had a soul. This soul was likely determination because she is the only candidate that is who opened this true grand fountain for darkness to live in without turning into stone. She likely had a very powerful amount of determination, and it checks out with her singing songs about killing monsters and killing darkness, or specifically killing darkness, actually. We see this exact trope inside of Omori and Attack on Titan, where the tree represents the trauma that once had and the remembering of who you lost. Everyday Mikasa visited this tree, and it pained her to forget Aaron's face. Mari was someone. Sunny would visit the tree in remembrance of Mari every day, forgetting her face as well. So now I'm gonna go on a bit of a reach, and I'm going to say that I believe that the Eggman is this weird combination of Des coming through and pushing through Chris's psyche. You know what? Let me run that back. So this trope commonly gets talked about with the topic of loss in general. For Mikasa, it was forgetting Aaron's face, visiting the same tree over and over and over, where the tree represents growing as a person and forgiving yourself as well as forgiving the horrible things you've done. For Omori, it was the murder of Mari, and it was the forgetting of her, and the respect that he gave to her was remembering her with the tree that they once played on. The thing about the Eggman is that this tree comes back as specifically the chapter 1 Fountain of Dreams, or Forest of Dreams in chapter 1. Why this tree? This tree to never ever come back and be replicated ever again. Something happened inside of this chapter 1 fountain that is blocked from Chris's trauma, something horrible. I believe that this Eggman is Des pushing through Chris's psyche. In Undertale, you have this panel that reads, "The soul is a special species." Mm. So in Undertale, you actually get it put into words, something that is proven so many times, and it reads, "The soul of special species of monster is called a boss monster. A boss monster's soul is strong enough to persist after death, if only for a few moments, a human soul, if only for a few moments, a human could absorb this soul. But that has never happened, though. In Undertale, we only kill monsters. We've never absorbed their soul. This is, in Deltarune, a moment where we absorbed a monster's soul, and they're persisting after death. In the Flowey fight, we actually see that they resist Flowey, and traits of their past actually show up even if their body is gone, and it's just their soul that remains. If Des were to be killed as shown in Roots, their soul, if absorbed by Chris, should persist. But how would that look like? I think I just solved what the Eggman might be. There's a reason why no one else can see the Eggman but Chris. And there's a reason why the Eggman can't live outside of chapter 1, but shows up in multiple chapters later to come. This is all mental. So I believe that this is a monster boss, and I believe between your fingers a faint gray crease glittered stubbornly. That was the death of Des. You can never wash it all away. And Chris isn't wrong to think that.
Also, mini theory. I think Friend might just be this video game character from Cat Petters that grew out to be a real life object from the dark fountain inside of the school, which is what gives it power to leave that dark fountain and stalk people. I don't think they're this all knowledgeable being, just this wave of enemies that grew too large to handle. Probably kind of like season 3 of Stranger Things. I think this is going to be a really fun chapter 5.
I hope you enjoyed.